Listen, guys, investing your money today going into 2026 is not the same as it was 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years ago. Now, yes, there are similar ways to invest your money, but there are new modern methods that a lot of people keep ignoring, and you can't ignore these new methods to stay up to date with your investments. So, whether you just got a job, you're still in school, or you've been working a job for several years, just like I have, I'm going to show you guys some new ways to invest your money, going from the least riskiest to even some more risky ways to invest your money. So, make sure you guys watch the whole video to make sure you guys are up to date on everything. Okay, so to get right into it, guys, like I said, whether this is your first job right out of college, you're still in school, or even if you've been working for several years just like I have, I'm going to give you guys the best investment advice for a modern portfolio going into 2026 and many years ahead. So I'm really going to talk about 5 different types of investments that you should have at this point in your life. And like I said, it doesn't really matter what point you're at, just matters that you know it is 2026 and you have a modern portfolio. And real quickly, right before I jump in, guys, I created a free modern portfolio beginner guide that definitely goes way more in depth than what I'm going to show in this video. This is absolutely free, so if you guys do want to download this for free and go check it out, the link will be in the description below. But anyway, let's get right into it. So like I said, I'm going to talk about 5 different investments, and the first one, which is the most important that you just can't disregard, is retirement. So right off the bat, guys, first thing, I'm not going to talk about this here because it's really not an investment strategy, but if you do have a job where you have a pension, that's usually any type of government job. So I'm lucky to have a government job to have a pension. You're already probably like a few steps ahead for retirement, but even if you have a pension, you really should be looking at these other retirement plans. And if you do not have a pension and you have a job where you're not given one, usually like a non-government job at a company, you really have to pay attention for this because you cannot ignore retirement. So the first type of retirement plans could be a 401k and a 403b. So these are tax deductible retirement plans, meaning that when you guys get paid through whatever job that you have, these are all tax deductible. So the money that you get paid, you don't pay taxes on them. They go right into your 401k or 403b. So these are really good. They're very tax efficient. And the best thing about this, if you have a job where it gives you a match, sometimes a job can give you up to a 100% match. That is literally free money that they're giving out. So you definitely should take that. But even if it's like a 50% match, you should also be taking it as well. Nowadays, I don't think many places or jobs do give any types of matches, but if you are lucky to be at a place where they're going to give you a 401k match, let's just say even it's 50%, if you're putting in, say, $1,000 a month, then they're going to give you an extra $500 to go into your 401k. So not only is it tax deductible, but you're also getting free money. So a 401k, 403b, those are essential. Like I said, especially if you don't have a pension, you really should be putting money into this, even if it's small amount. I'm even talking like $50 a month. That is better than nothing, because in the future, especially if you're young now, guys, if you're just getting a job at 22 years old, you're looking at like 43 years when you're 65. This money will grow exponentially. Also, a Roth IRA or a backdoor Roth, especially for salaries over 165k. Now, I know most people right out of college aren't making that, but sometimes if you have, a high paying job, like if you're a doctor or lawyer or an engineer, maybe even after like 2 or 3 years, you may be making over this. So you can do a backdoor Roth IRA. And trust me, it sounds almost like illegal, but it's totally legal. Everyone does this. I'm not going to go in depth on a backdoor Roth IRA because I think most of us here probably are in the Roth IRA section. So these are 2 things that you guys can have in addition to a pension. So now a Roth IRA, these are not tax deductible, meaning that you are going to put money into this with money that from your job where you're already paying taxes on. However, the good part about a Roth IRA is that you don't pay taxes as long as you don't take your money out of it until I believe it's over 59 and a half. So if you're putting money into a Roth IRA now, it's obviously money that's being taxed on from your job. But the good thing is that when you take the money out, when let's say if you're 60 years old, you are not paying tax on any of your capital gains that you've made from your Roth IRA. So just imagine investing money for almost 40 years or 40 plus years, and you don't have to pay any taxes on it. So that is obviously another tax efficient big advantage that you get from a Roth IRA. So the main thing here, guys, if you have a pension, you're already in a great position. But even if you do have a pension, a 401k or a Roth IRA, maybe you don't need both of them, maybe just one of them. Just have 2 types of retirement investing plans is a good idea. But especially if you do not have a pension, you definitely should look into at least one of these. But both of these, I think, are, only going to help you out down the line in the future. Just a note too, a 401k, 403b, usually the maximum is like $20,000 to $22,500 that you could put into it a year. So you could definitely put more into a 401k or 403b. A Roth IRA, I believe now in 2025, you can only max out at about $6,500. And you guys could tell. So it gets maxed out just because of how tax efficient it is in the future. You don't have to pay taxes on. So if you could potentially literally max a 401k and Roth IRA by close to $30,000 every single year. So if you are able to do that, you are really setting yourself up for success in the future. So the second type of investment that you should have, now I don't really think this is an investment. However, money technically does grow, although it loses out to inflation still. But if you do want to keep some cash in a savings account, if you are going to do this, guys, just put it in a high yield saving account, usually something where you're making more than 3% APY every single year. If you're going to put it in a savings and it's getting like 10 or 5%, that's really not that good. You're only gonna get pennies to a dollar. So if you are gonna put money in a savings account, just go to your bank. If it's like Chase or American Express, whatever it is, just find out how to get a high yield savings account, because like I said, although inflation is like 7 to 10% per year and you're only getting 3%, so you still might lose like 5% purchasing power of the cash that you're holding. This is still better than getting like less than 1%. So if you have money in a savings account, just put it in a high yield savings account. That's all I'm going to talk about this for the second type. Like I said, I don't really consider it investment because you're still losing purchasing power. However, technically it still is because it's getting 3%. But anyway, let's go into the next one. So number 3 are the long-term investments. So long-term investments, really 3 types of investments that you can be doing on your own. And some of these also could be put into like a Roth IRA. If you guys are doing your own Roths and you're doing them by yourself, you're managing them. But anyway, the first type of investment is going to be an ETF. So these give you guys a lot of freedom, and ETFs like SPY are going to track companies like the S&P 500. So you're really diversifying your portfolio of investments because that's what the S&P 500 does, hence the S&P 500. And ETFs I personally like because you get a lot of freedom with them. Now, index funds are practically the same thing. The main difference between ETFs and index funds can only be traded like once per day, and some of them require a minimum amount. So you may need like $1,000 to get an index fund because that's the required amount. So if you don't have $1,000 that you are investing at the moment, like you may only want to put like $250 a month into an investment, ETFs may be more your style. Now, like I said, these are long-term investments, so trading index funds once per day may not really make that big of a difference for you. But if you do like that freedom of a more active management style and where you're really tracking a lot of the ETFs and index funds, and you may want to trade them, more than once per day, I do think ETFs do give that freedom. Now, ETFs and index funds, they have low fees, which is also good, which I actually would suggest if you're paying a very low fee, it just makes more sense. Mutual funds, practically the same thing, except that is an active management by someone else. You're not doing it. Or ETFs, index funds, technically a passive management. So mutual funds, they're going to get higher fees, like 1 to 2%. So yeah, if you don't really want to worry about what you're investing in, or if you don't have time to look into different ETFs or index funds, you could do a mutual fund. But like I said, you are paying for someone else to manage it for you. So personally, I think if you do have the time, it's just more beneficial and you'll save money on fees to just purchase ETFs or index funds. But these, I'm not going to go too in depth about specific ETFs or index funds, but like I said, in my free modern portfolio beginner guide, I do talk about some specific ones in there. Number 4 are stocks. So stocks. The good thing about stocks is that you can literally go get specific narratives, and obviously stuff like the S&P 500, that's really more, diversifying your portfolio. But the good thing about stocks is that you guys can go to specific narratives. Like example, the AI stock boom is going crazy right now. Anything that's really like tech or AI, a lot of those stocks have been going crazy like the past few years. Now, could there potentially be a bubble in the future? Yes, I'm not going to talk about that right now. But if you guys want to even go more specific about like old narratives that you think may be good, like a lot of social media companies, like for example, like Snapchat stock, which is like $7 or $8 right now. Some people want to do certain things like that, or just certain companies that they like and that they use on a daily basis. For example, like even if you're someone that plays a lot of video games or just something that's interests you, like GameStop, that could be a stock that you want to invest in just because it's something that you're actively part of. Sometimes even companies that you may work for, they may have their own stock. So obviously, and you may even get some free shares or matches for purchasing your own company stocks that you work for. So that's another good idea that you could do for a more specific narrative. Now, for stocks, the good thing about them, it's, kind of like ETFs too. You could hold them long or short term. I think that if you're, investing in the S&P 500, that's more of a long-term hold. However, if you need a big purchase in your life, or you want to get a car or something, you may only need to hold it for like a few years, take that money out. It's just better than having it in a savings account, because something like the S&P 500 gives an average return about 8% per year. So that's really battling inflation as best as possible. Maybe even some years does better or worse, but that's why the average is like 8%. Now, you could also go to some lower market cap stocks that have a lot of potential. So like I said, this is the good thing about stocks. It's hard because you need to definitely know what you're doing and pay attention, do some of your own research on it. But if you're someone that got into like Palantir early on, and you invested into that as when it was a low market cap stocks, but you had a conviction on Palantir that it was going to go crazy in the next couple of years, you obviously made a lot of money on it. So stocks, I think that this is something good for people that want to go get specific narratives, or just companies that you believe in and that you like and that you use their products. I know that's what most people do. They like a product, they like the company, so they'll go invest in their stock, and that's totally fine. But I do think stocks, if you are watching them, definitely has a lot of potential. Like I said, especially with the AI and tech stocks going crazy right now, if you could find one early that's a lower market cap, yes, it's more risky. However, you can make some decent money short term rather than long term. Now, last but not least, what you guys know what this channel mainly covers is crypto. So for crypto, first of all, if you're someone that doesn't even want to get into crypto, you can still get exposure without actually getting crypto. So what is this? Crypto ETFs, IBIT, FBTC. One of these is BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. So if you don't want to actually buy crypto itself, you can get an ETF around crypto, which I think is still good exposure. There's also other companies like MicroStrategy, which is MSTR. That is Michael Saylor's company, which they put all their savings into Bitcoin. So that's another stock that you can purchase to get exposure to crypto, as that is basically a leveraged bet on Bitcoin. So that's another stock that you can look up. However, I do think in the modern age of 2026, you guys need some allocation to crypto, even if it's 1%. Meaning if you're investing $100, I think even putting $1 into Bitcoin is still worth it, because it is still early. Right now, Bitcoin came out in 2009. So right now we're at 15, 16 years that Bitcoin has been alive and active. So I do think that you need some allocation to it. Bitcoin is what you want to get some allocation, like I said, even if it's 1%, 1 to 5% for beginners. But there are altcoins. That's what I talk about on my channel a lot. So if you're interested in altcoins, you guys can go watch some of my other videos about some big altcoins, just like Ethereum, Solana, BNB, XRP. There's other altcoins that you guys can dive deep into. But if you have no crypto, to get some exposure to it, just get Bitcoin and just call it a day, because this is something that I talk about on my channel. Go 10, 20, 30 years. Bitcoin is going to give you a great return on your investment, because Bitcoin, really nothing has outperformed it since 2009. So if you had bought Bitcoin in any of the past 15 years, you most likely are in profit right now. Only in the past, like maybe 6 months, it's kind of on a downtrend right now. You may be a little negative on it, but in the next year, you'll be positive on your return. But anyone that's bought Bitcoin in the last 15 years has seen an ROI on it. So to finish this video off, guys, I'm going to give you some examples of some combined strategies. Now, these strategies I'm going to talk about don't go too specific. Like I said, that free beginner guide, you guys are going to want to go download that, because that goes a little bit more in depth. But anyway, I'm going to talk about some mild risk, medium, and some high risk things that you guys could be doing. So first off, if you are going mild and you're just starting to invest, so first off, you got to take care of all your retirement plan strategies. Once that's figured out, to actually invest. So 95%, if you're going mild, go with the stocks or ETFs. You just want to get SPY, VOO, just something simple that you guys understand. I think SPY is probably the most simple ETF. It just tracks the S&P 500. Now, I do think 5% crypto is very beneficial for you guys to get some allocation. And if you don't want to do Bitcoin, just do, IBIT or FBTC, an ETF that tracks Bitcoin. Medium risk, we're going to go 90% stocks or ETFs. You go SPY, VOO, or QQQ, that tracks the NASDAQ. So that's more like tech companies. And 10% into crypto. I think if you just put 10% into Bitcoin, I'm telling you guys, in 10, 20 years, this is going to be one of your great ROIs. And this will probably carry your investment portfolio, if I'm being totally honest. Then if you want to go a little bit more high risk, I think 80% should go into stocks or ETFs. You could do SPY, VOO. If you want to go a little bit more risk instead of QQQ, you could go TQQQ, which is just a triple leveraged QQQ. So if you believe in QQQ, why not just go TQQQ and just go triple leverage on it? So obviously that'll be a little bit more volatile, but if you're playing in the long term, if let's say QQQ goes up in the next 10 years, if it goes up 200%, which is, I think, is totally possible, then TQQQ is going to go up 600%. So if you're putting in $10,000 in a QQQ, obviously it could go to like $30,000, or it could even go to $60,000 in the next 10 years. I'm just throwing out numbers just for some easy examples. Definitely do some research on those ETFs though. Then, like I said, 20% into crypto. You want to go a little bit more into crypto. So if you're throwing in $100, get 20 of it into Bitcoin or spread it out. I even talk about this in my portfolio. Maybe you want to do like 10% Bitcoin, maybe 5% Ethereum, and then 5% some large cap alts. Just some examples. Solana, I think that has great potential. Solana, just kind of a smaller version and better version of Ethereum. There's Sui, which is another version of Solana, very similar blockchain. I'm not going to go in depth about it. This is just more of your high risk play, 80% stocks, 20% crypto. And then this is basically the last example that I'm going to show guys. But if you want to go even more risky, basically you'll just lower your stocks and go a little bit more into crypto. But definitely be careful. I would say, even at 75%, stocks, ETFs, and 25% crypto, that is getting pretty risky, but you can see some great ROI on your portfolio long term. It's just going to be very volatile, which means, yeah, it'll go up a lot of times, but it's also going to drop a lot of times. So you have to be able to manage that volatility. If you're someone that's doing it more short term, maybe that's not the best option for you. If you know in like 5 years you want to take a lot of your investments out to get a car or a house, you are risking a year where it drops a lot and you can see your portfolio drop. You'd have to get lucky to get it on a year where crypto is up, where you'd see your portfolio rise up a lot. But if you're going long term, I think that in the long term, 10, 20, 30 years, you're really going to make out pretty well with allocating some of your investment into crypto. So guys, this is how I'm going to end the video. Like I said, it got a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but this is really how you're going to invest as a beginner in 2026. And this is a more modern way to invest. Make sure you guys go down that free PDF that I created for you guys. It'll go a little bit more in depth. If you guys have any questions about anything that I made, you can join my free Discord, follow me on Instagram, you can DM me, ask me any investment questions. So thank you guys for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and like I said, leave a comment on any of my platforms if you have any questions. I will see you guys in the next one.